In April 1986, the world witnessed one of the worst nuclear disasters in history when reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, releasing massive amounts of radioactive material into the environment. The surrounding area, once teeming with life, was evacuated and declared uninhabitable for humans. But nature had other plans. In the absence of human activity, something unexpected happened. Wildlife returned. Among the most surprising survivors were the gray wolves of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. These animals didn't just survive in the radioactive landscape, they thrived. Recent studies show that the wolf population within the exclusion zone is up to 7 times larger than in nearby uncontaminated regions. With no human interference, hunting pressure, or habitat destruction, these apex predators found themselves rulers of a silent, eerie wilderness. They roam freely through abandoned towns, forests, and fields, often captured on hidden wildlife cameras, moving confidently through the ghostly remnants of civilization. Scientists were initially puzzled by their survival. After all, these wolves are exposed to high levels of radiation every day, yet they show few signs of illness. Genetic studies reveal some mutations, but no dramatic abnormalities that would suggest the population is in decline. In fact, they reproduce, hunt, and behave like any other healthy pack in the wild. Researchers are now using them to understand how long-term radiation exposure affects large mammals and whether it's possible for complex organisms to adapt over generations. The Chernobyl wolves have become a symbol of ecological resilience, showing that life can push back even after humanity retreats. While they remain a protected and mysterious species within the zone, they remind us that when humans step away, nature often begins to heal even in places we thought were ruined forever. Among the deadliest creatures on Earth, snakes hold a unique position. Their venom has evolved over millions of years to immobilize and kill prey with terrifying efficiency. But what happens when a snake becomes the victim of its own kind? In a controlled environment at a herpetology research center in Australia, scientists witnessed something astonishing. During a territorial dispute, one venomous viper struck another of the same species with the full envenomation and injection of venom that would normally prove fatal within minutes. The attacked snake convulsed, slowed down, and for a time, seemed near death. But it did not die. Instead, over the course of several days, its condition began to stabilize. Within a week, the snake had recovered entirely. This event caught the attention of toxinologists, who began to study the immune response of this individual more closely. What they found was groundbreaking. The surviving viper's blood contained specialized proteins, natural antivenoms that actively neutralize the toxic compounds injected into its body. These proteins didn't just fight off the venom, they dismantled it at a molecular level, rendering it inert. Scientists began isolating these proteins to better understand their structure and potential application. The implications were massive. If a snake could develop such internal immunity to its own species' venom, could humans replicate that for broader antivenom therapies? This discovery opened a new frontier in toxin research. Pharmaceutical companies began exploring the possibility of using such proteins to develop faster, more effective treatments for snakebite victims around the world. Snakebites kill over 100,000 people annually, mostly in rural areas with little access to antivenom. A breakthrough like this could save countless lives. The snake that survived wasn't just lucky, it was a biological marvel. It turned a near-death experience into an evolutionary advantage, and unknowingly, may have changed the way we fight venomous bites forever. In nature, survival is rarely about strength alone. Sometimes, it's about adaptation on a microscopic scale, hidden deep within the blood of a creature most people fear. Few creatures on Earth carry a reputation as enduring and unsettling as the cockroach. These insects have existed for over 300 million years, surviving planetary shifts, ice ages, and mass extinctions. But their most infamous claim to fame comes from their resilience in the face of nuclear radiation. Following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, There were reports of cockroaches crawling through the ruins, seemingly unaffected by the deadly levels of radiation that killed humans and animals in the vicinity. These anecdotes became legend, but later scientific testing confirmed that the legend wasn't far from the truth. In controlled laboratory experiments conducted during the Cold War, researchers exposed cockroaches to various levels of ionizing radiation, including doses lethal to mammals. While humans can die from exposure to 1,000 rads, some cockroach species survived exposures of up to 10,000 rads. That's 10 times the lethal dose for a human being. Their secret lies in their unique biology. Cockroaches have a slower cell cycle compared to humans, which means their cells don't divide as rapidly. Radiation is most harmful to cells that are in the process of dividing, which is why rapidly growing tissues, like bone marrow and intestinal lining, are so vulnerable in humans. In cockroaches, the reduced frequency of cell division offers a kind of passive defense, allowing them to resist damage long enough to continue functioning. Additionally, their simple body plan and durable exoskeleton make them less susceptible to physical trauma from environmental shocks like heat, pressure, or chemical exposure. Of course, they are not invincible. Prolonged or extremely high doses of radiation will eventually kill them, but their ability to survive where most other species perish remains remarkable. These findings have sparked continued interest in radiation biology and how certain animals naturally resist DNA damage. In popular culture, cockroaches have become symbols of apocalypse survival, often portrayed as the last living thing on Earth after humanity is gone. While that image is exaggerated, it's rooted in real biological science. The cockroach doesn't just endure because it's tough, it survives because it's perfectly built for a world in constant crisis. Basra, medical workers began to report rising rates of birth defects, unexplained illnesses, and environmental degradation. But in the midst of this human tragedy, there emerged an unexpected and mysterious phenomenon. Stray cats, living in the rubble of bombed-out buildings and chemical hotspots, were not only surviving but reproducing and forming large colonies in areas considered unfit for life. These cats had no veterinary care, no clean water sources, and constant exposure to heavy metals, burned plastics, and toxic dust. Scientists and veterinarians working with international aid organizations began to study them, curious about how they were managing to stay alive in such a harsh and poisonous environment. What they found surprised them. Many of these cats had elevated levels of heavy metals in their fur and organs, yet showed no signs of acute poisoning. Their livers and kidneys, the organs most vulnerable to toxic buildup, were functioning normally. Some researchers suggested that over generations, these cats may have developed a form of biochemical resilience, with certain genes activating detoxification pathways more efficiently. Others speculated that gut microbiomes adapted to bind and neutralize toxins before they entered the bloodstream. While the long-term health effects are still uncertain, the presence of these feline survivors in chemically compromised areas has become a point of both scientific interest and humanitarian symbolism. Locals often refer to them as ghost cats, moving silently through craters and alleys like spirits of a city trying to rebuild itself. They have become companions to displaced families, mascots of survival, and silent witnesses to human conflict. The resilience of these cats raises difficult questions about adaptation under duress. Can animals biologically evolve under extreme man-made stressors within just a few generations? And if so, what does that say about our own biology and potential responses to polluted environments? The Iraqi War? Cats are not superheroes, they are victims of circumstance, forced to adapt or perish. Yet by simply staying alive, they remind us that life has a way of continuing in where everything else falls apart. In March 2011, Japan experienced one of the most devastating natural and technological disasters in modern history. A massive earthquake and tsunami struck the eastern coast, triggering a meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Radioactive materials leaked into the surrounding ocean, contaminating vast stretches of water and raising global concerns about marine life. For years, scientists monitored the area, expecting to find mass die-offs and sterile zones devoid of life. But instead, something unexpected happened. Certain species of fish, including greenling, flatfish, and even sea bass, continued to live and reproduce near the radioactive spill zones. While many individuals were found with dangerously high levels of cesium and other isotopes, entire populations did not collapse. In fact, some species showed no visible signs of mutation or decline. This baffled marine biologists. How were these fish surviving in a radioactive environment that should, by all measures, be lethal? Further research revealed that the answer may lie in both biological and behavioral adaptations. Some fish appeared to limit their movements, staying within microhabitats where water currents diluted contamination. Others displayed unusual metabolic responses, detoxifying certain elements faster than expected or storing isotopes in fatty tissues less critical for survival. Even more intriguing were early findings suggesting that some fish had developed enhanced DNA repair mechanisms, allowing them to resist the cellular damage typically caused by radiation exposure. While these findings are still being studied and debated, they offer a rare look into how life can persist under conditions considered utterly hostile. The fish of Fukushima are not entirely safe to eat. Government agencies regularly test and ban catches with elevated contamination, but their continued existence has become a living question mark in environmental science. Are they simply surviving or actively adapting? And if they are adapting, how quickly can such changes occur in vertebrates? These fish have unintentionally become part of a long-term experiment, one that shows evolution does not always wait for millennia. Sometimes, it begins now, in silence, beneath the surface of a poisoned sea. Across the wetlands of North America, particularly in the agricultural regions of the Midwest, scientists began to notice something strange in the early 1990s. Frogs, once abundant and seemingly healthy, were hatching with severe deformities: extra legs, missing eyes, malformed spines. Initial theories pointed to parasites, but further investigation revealed a more troubling cause: chemical pollution. Pesticides, herbicides, and industrial runoff had seeped into the water systems, creating a toxic cocktail of endocrine disruptors and low-dose radiation for nearby facilities. For most vertebrates, this level of environmental assault would mean population collapse, but the frogs persisted. Some species, including leopard frogs and wood frogs, continued breeding despite genetic abnormalities, and their populations stabilized in areas where scientists feared total extinction. How could they survive under such constant stress? Researchers discovered that many of these frogs were developing rapid genetic responses, what some call microevolution. Certain mutations, though initially harmful, were being filtered by natural selection, allowing only the most chemically resistant individuals to reproduce. In effect, the frogs were adapting in real time to survive in human-altered landscapes. Additionally, their immune systems showed increased activity, and their skin, already known for its sensitivity, began producing higher levels of protective peptides that could block harmful compounds. Amphibians are often considered environmental canaries in the coal mine, because they are so vulnerable to pollution. But in this case, the frogs didn't just alert us to the damage, they also revealed nature's desperate attempt to adapt. Their survival raises uncomfortable questions about what it means to evolve in a world filled with synthetic poisons. Are these frogs stronger, or simply the last survivors of a more fragile past? In some regions, these mutated frogs have become subjects of long-term genetic studies, with scientists tracking their adaptation across generations. While their future remains uncertain, one thing is clear: even in its most distorted form, fights to continue. The frogs with too many legs, or none at all, are not symbols of failure. They are evidence that evolution can happen not just in ancient epics, but right now, in the ponds we've already poisoned. Wildfires are among the most destructive natural disasters on the planet, and when they sweep through forests and grasslands, few animals are as vulnerable as turtles. Unlike birds or mammals, turtles cannot flee quickly. Their survival depends entirely on their shells. But even that legendary protection has limits. In regions like the Amazon rainforest, California, and Australia, where intense wildfires have become more frequent, rescue teams began to find turtles with severe burns, exposed tissue, and partially melted or cracked shells. These injuries, once thought to be fatal, have now become the beginning of something extraordinary. In wildlife rehabilitation centers, injured turtles were given supportive care, hydration, wound cleaning, pain management, and something remarkable started happening. Their shells began to regrow. Unlike human bones, turtle shells are made of living tissue that can regenerate under the right conditions. Layer by layer, the keratin and bone structures slowly rebuilt themselves. In some cases, the process took over a year, but the turtles survived, adapted, and eventually returned to the wild. Scientists were fascinated by the regenerative capacity of these ancient reptiles. How could such complex, mineralized structures recover after such trauma? The answer lies in the turtles' biology. Their metabolism is incredibly slow, which allows their bodies to focus energy on healing over long periods. Additionally, certain genes responsible for shell development reactivate in adulthood, enabling regrowth that was once thought impossible. In the most extreme cases, 3D printed prosthetics were used to temporarily cover the damaged areas while the natural shell healed beneath. What began as emergency treatment evolved into a study of reptilian regeneration. These turtles, many of whom were found wandering through ash and rubble, are now symbols of survival through resilience and patience. Their recovery is not quick or easy, but it is steady and determined. They remind us that survival sometimes isn't about escaping danger, but about enduring it and slowly, stubbornly, healing. As wildfires continue to reshape ecosystems, the turtles that lived through fire show us what it means to carry your home on your back and still come out the other side. In the abandoned towns and forests of Chernobyl, Ukraine, and Fukushima, Japan, one animal has not only survived the radiation, but thrived in the absence of humans: the wild boar. These powerful, thick-skinned mammals have become the unexpected rulers of post-apocalyptic landscapes. After the nuclear disasters in both regions, people fled, but the boars moved in. With no hunting, no urban development, and little competition from other predators, their populations exploded. In Chernobyl, wild boars roam freely through decaying buildings, empty schools, and cracked highways. In Fukushima, they venture into residential areas, forage in gardens, and even sleep in abandoned houses. The most astonishing part is not just their presence, but their health. Despite feeding on contaminated plants and soil, many boars show no immediate signs of disease or deformity. Scientists studying their tissue have found elevated levels of radioactive isotopes, such as cesium-137, far above the safety limits for human consumption. Yet these animals continue to breed, fight, and live full lifespans. How is this possible? Researchers believe that wild boars' biology gives them an edge. They have fast reproductive cycles, robust immune systems, and highly adaptable digestive tracts. Some experts even suggest that their gut microbiome may help buffer the effects of ingested toxins, though more research is needed. In Japan, where the boar population has become so large it poses a threat to nearby farms, wildlife management teams have resorted to controlled culling, but even then, disposal is complicated because the meat is too radioactive to use. The wild boars of Chernobyl and Fukushima are now considered an invasive force in some areas, yet they also serve as living data points in the study of how mammals respond to long-term radiation. They show us that nature, when left alone, does not just recover, it adapts in unexpected ways. These animals are not symbols of purity or health, but of raw biological persistence. In a world poisoned by technology and disaster, the boars have become survivors, ghosts of the forest that know low. Ants are some of the most adaptable creatures on the planet. Found on every continent except Antarctica, they form complex societies and survive in environments ranging from jungles to deserts to city sidewalks. But one of their most impressive feats is their ability to survive human chemical warfare. For decades, people have fought ant infestations using powerful insecticides, nerve agents, growth inhibitors, and bait poisons designed to wipe out entire colonies. Yet in cities like New York, São Paulo, and Tokyo, ants are not only surviving, they're getting smarter. Entomologists studying urban ant populations began to notice strange patterns. Colonies exposed to repeated insecticide treatments were rebounding faster than expected. In some cases, the poison no longer worked at all. Genetic analysis revealed a stunning fact. Certain species, like the Argentine ant and Pharaoh ant, had developed resistance at the molecular level. Enzymes in their bodies began neutralizing the active toxins before they could do damage. Nerve cells mutated to block the pathways targeted by common chemicals. Even more astonishing, some ants began altering their foraging behavior, avoiding baited areas entirely and communicating chemical danger through their pheromone trails. In essence, the colonies began treating poison as part of their environment, not a fatal threat. Scientists observed another phenomenon too: super colonies, where different ant groups merged, sharing information and expanding resistance traits more rapidly across generations. In laboratory tests, ant queens from resistant colonies passed their immunity to offspring, creating generations of poison-proof insects. In some regions, this has forced pest control companies to redesign their entire chemical approach. More than just an annoyance, these ants now serve as a case study in real-time urban evolution. They are rewriting what we thought we knew about adaptation speed. These are not just survivors, they are strategic, coordinated, and evolving at a rate faster than we can poison them. The ants that crawl across your kitchen floor may carry a genetic legacy of 1,000 chemical battles, and each one makes them harder to kill. In the dark alleys, industrial zones, and overflowing landfills of major cities across North America, one animal has quietly become a master of survival. In the most polluted environments we've created, the raccoon, with their masked faces, nimble paws, and unshakable curiosity, raccoons have evolved from forest dwellers into urban survivalists. But it's not just their cleverness that sets them apart, it's their ability to live in areas saturated with chemicals, pesticides, heavy metals, and decaying waste. In places where other wildlife disappears, raccoons flourish. Studies conducted in urban zones like Chicago, Toronto, and Detroit show that raccoons foraging in landfills and industrial parks often carry high levels of toxins in their blood and liver tissue, including lead, arsenic, and PCBs. Yet they show few signs of organ failure or reduced lifespan. How is this possible? Researchers believe raccoons have unusually strong livers and kidneys, capable of processing and neutralizing a wide variety of contaminants. Their diet's typically a chaotic mix of spoiled food, plastic-laced scraps, and even rotting animals have pushed their digestive systems to become more selective and resistant. In addition, raccoons possess one of the most diverse gut microbiomes among urban mammals, which may help break down toxins before they enter the bloodstream. Even their fur and skin appear to bind and shed certain chemical compounds more effectively than other animals. Their intelligence plays a role too. Raccoons learn which areas are safest to scavenge, which bins carry edible waste, and how to avoid direct contact with dangerous substances. They change their routes, open containers, and teach their offspring survival behaviors specific to human-created hazards. In a way, raccoons have not just adapted to pollution, they've incorporated it into their evolutionary strategy. While this doesn't mean they're immune to damage, their resilience in the face of chemical exposure is a biological marvel. They remind us that nature doesn't always fight back with strength or speed. Sometimes it survives by slipping between the cracks, scavenging from our excess, and turning toxicity into routine. In a world we've made increasingly hostile to life, raccoons are not just survivors. They are proof that intelligence, flexibility, and biological grit can still triumph over human carelessness. 10 animals, 10 incredible stories. Each of them faced something we created: radiation, poison, destruction, and somehow they adapted. They didn't just survive. They evolved, resisted, endured. Not because the world became kinder, but because life always finds a way.